My fiance's son grabbed my $11,000 credit card for emergencies. 2 weeks later, he posted, "New drip in Bahamas, baby." I called, and he just said, "Say goodbye to your money." I didn't argue. I just said, "Okay." 2 weeks later, he got home from the Bahamas, opened his front door, froze, and just stared at what was waiting in the middle of the living room. My name is Gilbert. I'm 42, and I work as a financial advisor. I'm the guy who tells people for a living, don't co-sign, don't lend money you can't afford to lose. And if someone gets angry at your boundary, that's your answer. I'm also the guy who somehow ended up engaged to a woman whose adult son thinks boundaries are emotional abuse. Her name is Melissa. She's 39, warm, funny, thoughtful in 100 small ways. When we first started dating, I felt calm, like I could finally stop bracing for impact. Then there's her son, Caleb. Caleb is 22. He's not a kid. He's also not independent. He's loud in that main character way. Always confident, always offended, always asking for respect. The first time we all had dinner together, he shook my hand and said, "So you're the money guy." I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. Still, I tried. I really did. I paid for dinners. I helped him fix his resume like 5 times. I listened to him explain how he was going to start a brand without ever explaining what he sold. I told myself, he'll grow up. He just needs time. Then came the Sunday dinner at Melissa's mom's place, the one that still plays in my head like a bad clip I can't delete. Her mom, Diane, had the whole table set like it was a holiday. Nice plates, real napkins, candles. The vibe was family values, but with sharp edges. Caleb came in late, smelling like cologne and entitlement. He dropped into his chair and started eating without even saying hello. Diane looked at me over her glass and smiled like she'd already decided what I owed them. "So, Gilbert," she said, "you're good with money, right?" I nodded. "That's my job." Caleb snorted. "Perfect." I looked at him. Perfect for what? He leaned back and said, "When you marry my mom, are you going to take care of us, or what?" The room went quiet. Melissa's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Her eyes widened in that "please don't" way. Diane didn't look surprised at all, like they'd rehearsed this. I tried to keep it light. "I'm marrying your mom, not the whole neighborhood." Caleb smiled. "But it wasn't friendly. Don't be dramatic. I'm just asking." "Families share," I said. "Families also respect each other." Diane's smile tightened. "In this family, we don't keep score." Caleb pointed his fork at me. "Yeah, so don't keep score. You've got plenty." Melissa finally spoke. "Caleb, stop." But he didn't stop. He stared right at me and said, "Emergencies happen. Mom shouldn't have to beg." And something in my chest went cold, because that wasn't a random comment. That was a warning. That was him telling me straight up that my money was already being counted as theirs. I looked at Melissa. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I just said, calm and clear, "Let's be honest right now. I'm not going to be anyone's backup bank account." Caleb's face shifted instantly. Like a switch flipped. He laughed and said, "We'll see." And I remember thinking, okay. So that's the game. Melissa and I got engaged 3 months later. Yes, I know how that sounds. But here's the thing. When it was just me and her, life was normal, peaceful. We cooked dinner. We watched dumb shows. We talked about travel plans and home projects and boring adult stuff. Caleb was the only constant source of tension, and Melissa had a talent for making it seem temporary. He's just stressed. He's figuring things out. He's been through a lot. I heard those lines so many times they started sounding like elevator music. Caleb didn't have a steady job. He did gig work. Some weeks he delivered food. Some weeks he traded crypto. Most weeks he slept late and acted like the world was persecuting him personally. He also spent money like he had a trust fund. New shoes, new jackets, new phone, always something. Melissa covered the gaps, not in a dramatic way, in 1,000 small ways. Can you pick up groceries for him? He's short. Can you help him with his phone bill? Just this once. He needs his car insurance, or he can't work. At first, I said no. then Melissa would get quiet. Not angry, just sad, like I'd kicked a puppy. And I hated that feeling because I wasn't trying to punish her. I was trying to not get dragged into Caleb's chaos. So sometimes I helped, and every time I did, Caleb's demands got a little bolder. One night, we were sitting on Melissa's couch, and Caleb walked in without knocking like he owned the place. He tossed his keys on the table and said, "My car's making a noise. I need like 800." I actually laughed. 800 for a noise. He shrugged. Could be serious. I said, "Take it to a mechanic." He stared at me. "Mechanics cost money." I said, "So does living." He rolled his eyes. "Bro, you're a financial advisor. Don't lecture me. Just spot me." Melissa jumped in fast. "Caleb, don't talk to him like that." He looked at her, fake sweet. "I'm not. I'm just asking for help." Then he looked back at me and said, "You're marrying my mom. That makes you family. Family helps." The word family started feeling like a weapon. It wasn't about love. It was about entitlement. A week after that, Diane called Melissa while I was over. Melissa put her on speaker without thinking. Diane's voice came through sharp and confident, like she was running a meeting. "So, have you two picked a date?" Melissa said, "We're thinking October." Diane immediately said, "Good, then we can finally stop worrying about stability." I sat up. "Stability?" Diane didn't even acknowledge me directly. "Yes, once you're married, Caleb will have real guidance, real support." I said, "Diane, I'm not responsible for Caleb's finances." Diane huffed. "You're joining the family. Don't act like you don't understand." Caleb, sitting right there, muttered loud enough for me to hear, "Told you he's selfish." Melissa tried to soften it. "Mom, please, let's not." Diane cut her off. "Melissa has struggled long enough. If Gilbert is a real man, he will step up." I stared at Melissa, waiting for her to shut that down. She didn't. She just looked tired. Like she wanted everyone to stop talking, not like she disagreed with them. Later that night, Melissa asked me something that made the hair on my arms stand up. "Could you keep an emergency card at the house?" she said carefully. I blinked. "Like a credit card?" "Just for emergencies," she said quickly. "Not for shopping, not for fun. Just in case." I stared at her. "Why would you need my card?" She hesitated. "Because if something happens and you're not reachable, or if I need to handle something fast," I already knew what she wasn't saying. If Caleb created another crisis. If Caleb needed a rescue. I said, "Melissa, no." Her face tightened. "So, you don't trust me." "I trust you," I said. "I don't trust the way you're pressured." She crossed her arms. "He's my son." There it was again. The magic phrase. Like, "he's my son," meant, and therefore you must accept whatever he does. I tried to be direct but not cruel. "Melissa," I said, "Caleb is 22. If he has emergencies, he needs a job and savings, not access to my credit." She went quiet, then said, "You're making this into a big thing." I said, "Because it is a big thing." She looked at me like I was the problem, like I was the one introducing conflict. And that's when I started noticing the pattern more clearly. Caleb would push. Melissa would keep the peace. Diane would guilt. And I would be expected to fold because I was the stable one. I didn't want to be a villain. I wanted to marry the woman I loved. But I also knew something from experience. If you don't set your boundary early, you end up setting it during a disaster. And a disaster was coming. I could feel it. It happened on a random Tuesday night. We were at Melissa's place, packing for a weekend trip. Nothing fancy, just a little getaway. I'd booked it because Melissa looked exhausted, and I wanted us to have a few days without Diane's phone calls and Caleb's drama. Melissa went to shower. Caleb was in the kitchen helping, which meant sitting on a stool, eating chips, and watching me fold clothes, like I was his employee. My wallet was on the counter because I'd just paid for takeout. I heard the soft leather sound of it opening. I turned and saw Caleb holding my wallet, like it was his. I said, "Put that down." He didn't. He flipped through it, saw my premium credit card, and his eyes lit up. "Damn," he said. "This one's got a high limit." My voice stayed calm. "Give me my wallet." Caleb slid the card out slowly, like he was doing it on purpose to get a reaction. "I'm not stupid," he said. "I know what you make." I stepped closer. Put it back, he smiled. Relax. It's just for emergencies. I said, no. He stood up and walked toward the hallway, card in hand. I followed him. Caleb. He turned at the door and said, if you take this from me, I'm telling Mom you're controlling. That line hit me like a slap, because it was calculated. It was him using Melissa's emotions as a shield. Melissa came out of the bathroom in a towel, hair dripping. What's going on? She asked. Caleb switched to innocent voice instantly. Nothing. Gilbert's just being intense. I looked at Melissa. He took my card. Melissa's eyes widened. Caleb, he jumped in fast. For emergencies. You asked for an emergency card, remember? I stared at Melissa. You asked him? Melissa looked down. I mentioned it. Caleb shrugged. So we're covered. You're welcome. I said, no. Give it back. Caleb's face hardened. Wow. So you're really doing this right now? Melissa said, quiet and stressed. Gilbert, please, not tonight. That was the moment something in me shifted. Not because of the card, because Melissa was asking me to accept disrespect to keep her son calm. I took a breath and said, give me the card. Caleb stared at me, then casually shoved it into his pocket. Fine, he said. I'll keep it safe. Melissa didn't fight him, didn't demand it back. She just stood there, looking like she wanted the whole moment to disappear. And that's when I realized, if I argued, I'd be the bad guy. If I yelled, they'd call me abusive. If I demanded basic respect, they'd say I was breaking the family. So I didn't give them the fight. I just said, calm and flat. Okay. Caleb blinked. Okay. I nodded once. Okay. He looked confused, like he expected screaming. I went back to packing. But inside, my brain was already doing what it always does when money gets messy. It went cold, clear, organized. Because here's the truth about me. I don't do revenge tantrums. I do consequences. 2 weeks later, I found out exactly what emergencies meant to Caleb. I was at my desk at work when my phone buzzed with an Instagram notification. Caleb posted a mirror selfie in some expensive outfit. Chains out. Watch flashing. Big grin. Caption: New drip and Bahamas baby. I stared at it for a long second, thinking, no way. Then I opened my credit card app. Charge after charge after charge. Sneaker boutique, designer store, resort deposit, flights, restaurant tabs that made my stomach twist. It wasn't a small mistake. It was a full lifestyle upgrade. The total sat there like a punch. $10,984.61 pending and posted. Basically the whole emergency limit. I called Caleb. He answered on the third ring, loud music in the background like he was already celebrating. Yo, he said, like we were buddies. My voice was steady. Caleb, you used my card. He laughed. Yeah, what emergency? I asked. My life, he said. I needed a reset. I said, you spent $11,000. He didn't even deny it. Didn't apologize. Didn't pretend. He just said, casual and nasty. Say goodbye to your money. I waited a beat. Are you serious? He sighed like I was annoying him. Bro, you're marrying my mom. You can afford it. My hands were shaking, but my voice stayed calm. Okay, I said. He paused. That's it? That's it, I said. And I hung up. And then I got to work. Step 1. Documentation. I screenshot every charge. I saved his Instagram post. I saved the caption. I saved the timestamp. I wrote down what he said on the call. Step 2. The card company, I reported it as unauthorized use. I told them the card was taken from my wallet without permission. I gave them Caleb's full name. I sent them the evidence. Step 3. My attorney. Because here's the detail Caleb never respected enough to ask about. Caleb didn't live with Melissa. He lived in a small rental house. That I owned. It was an investment property I bought years ago. Good area. Modest place. Reliable rent. When Melissa and I got serious, she begged me to rent it to Caleb cheap. Until he got on his feet. I agreed. Month-to-month lease, reduced rent, clear written terms, and Caleb still paid late. Twice. With excuses both times. So my attorney did everything clean. Notice to pay or quit. Notice of termination. Certified mail. Proper timelines. No drama. Just paperwork. Melissa found out fast. She called me, voice shaky. Did you report the charges? Yes, I said. Her breathing hitched. Gilbert, he's going to get in trouble. I said, he stole from me. Trouble is what follows that. She started crying. Can you just cancel it? Please, he's my son. I stared at my kitchen counter, feeling that weird mix of anger and sadness. No, I said. She whispered, you're choosing money over family. That line made my chest burn. No, I said. I'm choosing basic respect over being used. She said, he didn't mean it like. I cut her off. He told me to say goodbye to my money. Silence. Then she said, okay, so what happens now? I said, now you decide if you want to build a life with me or keep defending a grown man who steals. She hung up. For the next 2 weeks, Caleb posted like nothing happened. Beach video. Pool drink. Caption, living. Meanwhile, my attorney's letters kept going to his mailbox, and he kept ignoring them. He thought I'd fold. He thought Melissa would guilt me. He thought Diane would call and shame me. Diane did call. She left a voicemail. You're destroying this family over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Like Caleb accidentally tripped and my credit card fell into the Bahamas. I didn't call her back. I didn't argue with anyone. I just followed the process. Because consequences are boring. That's why they work. 2 weeks after Caleb's trip, the eviction timeline ended. The property manager texted me. He's back in town. We're scheduled. And that's when I finally felt calm. Not happy, not excited, just calm. Because I knew what Caleb didn't. He thought the Bahamas was the climax, but it was just the part where he stopped paying attention. Caleb came home on a Tuesday. At 3:40 p.m., he unlocked the front door to his rental house. He stepped inside and froze because the living room wasn't his living room anymore. In the middle of the room was a folding table. On it, a printed inventory sheet, a copy of the writ of possession, an envelope labeled Caleb Walters, a set of keys taped to a paper that said turn in to deputy. Along the wall were his belongings in taped boxes. Neat, labeled. Packed like an adult had done it because an adult had. And standing calmly near the hallway was a sheriff's deputy. Caleb blinked like his brain couldn't accept what his eyes were seeing. What the hell is this? He snapped. The deputy kept his tone neutral. Sir, you've been lawfully evicted. This property is no longer yours to occupy. Caleb's face went pale. No, I live here. The deputy pointed to the paperwork. Not anymore. Caleb grabbed the envelope, ripped it open, and pulled out the letter inside. 1 page. Simple. You told me to say goodbye to my money, so I'm saying goodbye to your access to my life. Do not contact me again. Caleb yelled my name like volume could reverse legal timelines. It didn't. He started ranting at the deputy. The deputy didn't bite, just repeated the same calm lines like a wall. Caleb stood there, breathing hard, staring at the boxes like they were an insult. Maybe for the first time in his life, he realized other people don't have to save him. Melissa called me that night. Her voice sounded wrecked. He's at my house. He's screaming. He says you ruined his life. I said, no, he did. She whispered, I didn't think you'd really go that far. I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because it was unreal. I didn't think you'd let him go that far, I said. Then I said it, plain and final. The engagement is off. She inhaled sharply. Gilbert, please, I cut in gently. Melissa, I'm not your son's safety net. I'm not your family ATM. And I'm not marrying into a system where I'm punished for saying no, she cried. I stayed quiet. Then I hung up and blocked the number. The credit card company reversed most charges. The rest is part of the legal process. Caleb still tells people I'm petty. Diane still tells people I'm cold. That's fine. Because here's what I learned, and it's the same thing I tell my clients now with even more conviction. People who get angry at your boundaries were benefiting from you having none. And family is not a free pass to use someone. I spent years advising other people to protect themselves. Now I do it too. If you steal from me, you don't get a debate. You get consequences.